Good morning, everyone. Clint McLaughlin here, Midwest Market Management. I've got Riley Sykard on with me here today. It is Thursday, June 11th already. We got a crop report coming out here in about an hour, Riley. We had some pretty good rains move across northeast Wisconsin last night. Warm and humid. There were a lot of storms moving across the Midwest. I'm assuming you were watching the radar last night, and man, there was some ugly looking stuff moving on the radar, stuff that probably nobody really wanted. A lot of red. We were supposed to get they were calling for 80-mile-an-hour winds here. We ended up not getting it here. I'm sure somebody did. For the most part, this is one of them situations where I'm sure there's people out here that got some hail and some corn blew over, probably did some damage. And for those that experienced it, that's never good. But overall, pretty much everybody got some moisture out of it, and things are just continuing to move along in that fashion.
Yep, very well put there. Locally here in central Iowa, there was a big hail belt that was coming our way, and then something switched right before it got into our area, and the hail quit, and we got missed on the hail. But like you said, plenty of areas that got hit and plenty of areas that got missed. But moral of the story is we got more rain. And in terms of what's the market looking at, it's the rain, not the hail and the wind that if you're in that area, it really stinks. But if you're everybody else just got some good rain. So with all that said, let's dive into some maps here today. First thing I got, temperatures. This is a bit of a change from Tuesday and last week. We knew a cool off was coming as this storm cell was coming through, and now that's hit. You can see 1 to 5 day temperatures now pretty much in the 70s to low 80s until you get to the southern areas that are growing crops. So a lot of temperatures in the 70s over the next 5 days, and even the 60s up in like North Dakota. So very mild temperatures now for the next 5 days. Then the 6 to 10, really, really hot in the western belt, especially Kansas. You can see average temperatures in the 90s and pushing 100. And Nebraska staying pretty warm as well, but rest of the country relatively mild. That eastern belt staying cool, and central states staying pretty cool as well. So the west, where they are already a little drier, looks like they're going to dry out from these rains faster than everybody else too, because they're getting more heat. So one thing that we talked pretty in depth about on Tuesday is the drought monitor map. And from all these rains that have came, curious to see how much color gets dropped off. But we can see this was last week's map. And if you look over to the left, very, very little was actually changed from the week before. You can see little pockets like in northern Minnesota, it's a little bit drier there than it was the week before. And down in the Delta, there's some little small blips that have a little bit less color, but definitely not a big change that we were expecting to see. So Clint, you had just mentioned before we started recording, very curious to see what are the guidelines and rules that they use to either add color or subtract color from this map.
Yeah, and this is one of the favorite thing that the natural bulls go to look for problems. And, it's a little bit disturbing. We don't have the clientele basis in the South that we do up here, but we do have some fair amount. And, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, all of these areas are very colorful here. And the customers that I do talk to down there, the biggest problem they're facing is way too much moisture, nitrogen loss, like all those issues. And they got it lit up here. I've got customers in that northeast corner of Missouri that are still trying to plant beans, and it's still in the drought monitor map is yellow. And it's just a lot of distortion, in my opinion.
Yeah, like it's hard to put into terms what makes those maps perform the way they do. But with that said, let's keep on moving here. Last 2 weeks of rainfall, you mentioned it, Clint. A lot of people have gotten rain, especially Missouri, eastern Kansas, eastern Nebraska. regions that for the most part really needed some rain, and they definitely got a lot. Some areas more than they necessarily wanted. But yeah, overall, if you look at this map, the general consensus is a lot of guys got rain that they really needed. And for the areas that were already too wet, I wouldn't say they got enough to cause any big flood issues, or I haven't heard of any mass replant going on. There's always going to be spots, but I have definitely not heard of any areas that are fighting a mass replant issue. So last 2 weeks, there's been rain. What's the trend and changes going forward? 1 to 5, we can see pretty dry in the western belt again. Some of Nebraska potentially getting some rains, but Dakotas, most of Minnesota, Nebraska, pretty dry again. So going back to more of the trend that we were seeing month and a half ago, where the west gets missed and the central and east gets hit. So we'll have to see if that trend actually does turn into a reality. But the 6 to 10 shows a very similar picture. Some small chances up in the Dakotas and Minnesota, but still nothing very excessive. So as you're looking at the maps, looks like Illinois is going to get a lot of rainfall in the next 10 days. Some of Iowa will as well. And then the eastern belt, as just getting what they need to, some areas might even be a little excessive, but we're kind of flipping back to what we were a month ago, Clint. The east and the central is either got a good amount of rainfall or maybe even a little excessive, and the west looks to start drying out a little bit again. But the difference is this time the west has had a little bit more rain to help them out in the short term, so it's not going to be an immediate, they're just in critical condition. It's going to take a little bit for that Band-Aid to get ripped off. So with all that said, put it in the 1 to 13 day. Moral of the story is we're getting to the 24th of June with still this much rain in the forecast. And the thought of a trend line crop for corn and beans, the potential is still there. That's the moral of the story. To me, that's why the markets are still performing the way they are. The thought of a trend line or better yield is still more than in everybody's heads as a possibility. So with that said, Clint, I think that's all the maps I got today.
10-4, Riley, I appreciate you moving through that. A lot of growing season ahead of us yet, a lot of time for things to change. But as of right now, looks like we're off to a pretty good start. Appreciate everybody tuning in here. Again, Clint McLaughlin, Riley Sykard, Midwest Market Management. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next week.
This material has been prepared by a sales or trading employee or agent of Midwest Market Management and is or is in the nature of a solicitation. This material is not a research report prepared by of Midwest Market Management Research Department. By accepting this communication, you agree that you are an experienced user of the futures markets capable of making independent trading decisions, and agree that you are not and will not rely solely on this communication in making trading decisions. Distribution in some jurisdictions may be prohibited or restricted by law. Persons in possession of this communication indirectly should inform themselves about and observe any such prohibition or restrictions. To the extent that you have received this communication indirectly and solicitations are prohibited in your jurisdiction without registration, the market commentary in this communication should not be considered a solicitation. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance, whether actual or indicated by simulated historical tests of strategies, is not indicative of future results. Trading advice is based on information taken from trades and statistical services and other sources that of Midwest Market Management believes are reliable. We do not guarantee that such information is accurate or complete, and it should not be relied upon as such. Trading advice reflects our good faith judgment at a specific time and is subject to change without notice. There is no guarantee that the advice we give will result in profitable trades.